Okay, so hello everybody. This is a review of, or my attempt at a kind of succinct review of The Violet Bear It Away by Flannery O'Connor. And this is her second novel, I believe. She only wrote two novels in her lifetime, technically, and she was most known for being a outstanding like short story format writer. And excuse my eyes are like a lot more because I have to. My computer screen is just like a lot more brighter than I thought it would be. But yeah. So this is a 1960 novel, and it follows a one of the more. It's basically a kind of an extrapolation of a short story that she wrote, which I believe she included. I can't remember the name of it. I think "You Can't Be Any Poorer Than You Are Dead" is the one that it's of the one this is drawn from. So there's like similar themes of this. So essentially, as much as I don't like that word, this follows the um, kind of a slew of main characters, but the main kind of driving force of the novel, I'd say, is Mason Tarwater, and he is. Even though in the first act, spoiler alert, he dies. He pretty at least that's how it's described. But there's a definite backstory to him that kind of O'Connor goes into. Excuse my cat over there. Is on the tambourine. Okay. All right. So Mason Tarwater is an evangelist, and he's a very fiery, extremely radical kind of guy. He's like very much like of not just of the scripture, but he's also of like revelations and prophecies. He's very big on prophecies and um, yeah. Excuse me, cat there. Okay. And he's convinced that he will, if he's buried in the right way on the like on a certain day, he will rise again from the get dead. So there's a huge resurrection kind of thing, and he's telling his son Francis Marion Powerwater, and he is a young man going on his teen years, I think, and he basically kind of kidnaps him, like no joke. He like literally kidnaps him from a man named Raybar, who is his uh, basically Tarwater's nephew, I believe. Tarwater is his great uncle, pretty much is how he's described, or maybe he's no wait, he's technically no, he's Francis's great uncle, I think. So, and then that would make him his uncle. So I think okay. So either way, there's a family kind of pretty close. They were at some point closer than a lot more close. Remind me not to have paper bags because cats love paper bags. If you don't know. So yeah, but I'm not gonna re-record this because I'll never get around to it. Anyway, so yeah. He's looking into Judgment Day. Tarwater's has his is very keen on the fact that a Judgment Day is coming again. It's nigh. This is like a very kind of super like passionate kind of observation. Like he's convinced of this. So he's like, so the whole most of the novel, it's not a big novel. It's maybe less than 300 pages, but yeah, um, it really much kind of the center of it is like the pole dynamic between Raybar, who is a very cultured, kind of snobby to an extent. I mean, he's essentially presented as the antagonist of this novel, so he's kind of the villain, not the definitely not the good guy, but but at the same time, it's not as if it's not so clear whether or not Tarwater is the protagonist in that kind of. It doesn't seem like there's that much of a thing, but there's definitely kind of anti-heroes, and I think when it comes down to it, Francis is actually considered the hero, even though he doesn't really exhibit a lot of heroic traits. I don't think there's like he's a little bit cowardly, he's a little bit immature even for his age. He's even as a teenager, but he's also I don't know. But yeah, so Raybar is a I think did I mention he's a school teacher? Yeah, he's kind of he's been educated, he's been in the world, and maybe that's a bit of a reflection of O'Connor's own life, where she had a kind of Baptist upbringing, but then she became Catholicized, but she also went up to get educated for like a literature in a kind of a literary circle up north. I can't remember the state, but it was definitely it was somewhere maybe like in Connecticut or something, like maybe the New England coast, I think. And then she came back, so she's kind of had so there's this kind of similarities there. But yeah, so um, Raybar has a child with Down syndrome, who's named Bishop, and Bishop is also kind of pulled between these two forces because uh, all this time before when Tarwater was still alive, he was trying to baptize him, and so in order to save him, so basically there's like a huge disagreements between Tarwater and Raybar because of Raybar's what he thinks to be a kind of a superstitious kind of um, inclinations in uh, Tarwater, because he sees Tarwater as basically kind of a stupid guy that just falls for all these like dumb. Oh, you're just kind of pulled into this kind of the sway of religious fanaticism, and Raybar, or I'm sorry, Tarwater actually thinks he's like 100% right. So he's like, there's this the whole essential kind of there's that word again, the driving force of this narrative is the not so much an intercessory as a kind of a push pull dynamic, a very raw kind of very empowering force between the young boy, especially of Francis, who is pulled between these two forces, where he's like, on one hand he's like, no, faith is, superstition, you should be more worldly, more cultivated, and learn, like and just critically think, be more critical, more analytical. Don't fall for this religious kind of hobnob, hob kind of hogwash. It's and on the other hand, he's pulled into the enticing yet also kind of intensifying kind of fiery monologues that you hear Tarwater giving. So you get like a lot of like a very charismatic but very almost deranged kind of like lunacy in his visions, where he's like very visionary, and he has this idea of like what's, he has a plan, like all these plans, and there's all this stuff has to fit together, otherwise, like it's very much uh the prophecy is unfolding as he speaks. So um yeah, but there's also another idea of this idea of this nested kind of theme of the blood baptism by blood, which is basically this idea that when there's a drowning near the end, when Raybar and bishops are Tarwater basically has has Bishop Brown drown. So basically, Tarwater has his um, great uncle is told to baptize Bishop, but drowns the boy instead. So when that happens, the question is, was he technically baptized still, or is he, or because he technically murdered him, is that kind of nested in the like it's a kind of a double uh, binding kind of element too, because it's like it's this very Flannery O'Connor esque Southern Gothic kind of thing of like a twisted kind of thing of religion, and there's a kind of a slight Gnostic kind of tinge in there too of you know um, the evil acts being used to get to God, or like violence, which is very I should have started off with that at first, but this the idea that the title of this is actually a Bible verse, which is from a very specific version of the Bible called the Douay Bible. I think it's pronounced Douay, and it's a French kind of. It was used by these French ministers back in like the 15th, 16th century, I think, maybe a little bit later, and they all got together and they kind of cobbled together this kind of this their version of the Bible of all these monks, and they it says from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent bear it away. So, but I thought that this was interesting because I took a look at these other verses, and the other one that I saw was Matthew 11, 12, says in the new one, in NIV version, from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has been subjected to violence, and the violent people have been raiding it. So, the violent people have been raiding it rings a lot differently than the violent bear it away. I think there's like it's almost like that's a little less nuanced than what they were getting at in this kind of this idea of violence, I guess. But yeah, I think this theme of violence shows up in Flannery O'Connor's work a lot, where she's um, not necessarily like using it as a state of exonerating or absolving violence, but using it as, or just kind of the theme or the idea of kind of playing with this scenario where violent acts necessarily have a kind of a as a short end or a uh, instrument, I guess, to get to God as a way, as a means of uh, prophecy. And you see this too in the Bible too, like prophecies of all the time. Of Abraham's like a prime example of sacrificing his son Isaac, and Kierkegaard talked about this too, of this the notion that if Isaac or if Abraham had hesitated just a little bit on these different scenarios of what could have happened and what could have this little tiny little bit of intention, that lack of, if had he just a little bit been more apprehensive, the entire thing would have been ruined. It would have been corrupted the entire trajectory of biblical everything history, and and this. So I think that, I'm not sure to what extent she was O'Connor was using Kierkegaard as an example, or if she was thinking about him in that. But I think her leap of faith kind of reminds me of Kierkegaard's. And there, other people have pointed out that there was existential themes too. So this kind of reminded them of maybe a little bit of like post-war existentialism of like Jean-Paul Sartre or like Albert Camus, in the sense that there, this idea of like being kind of struck between two forces, having to decide, and not knowing. It reminds me kind of the uh, kind of comparable kind of instance of Sartre talking about the young boy who he has to choose between going to war or caring for his elderly mother, and both of those acts were kind of existentially kind of um, valid, reason, or decisions, which none of those two could possibly be the better in that sense, because there's no overriding grand narratives in life. So I think in that sense, Flannery O'Connor is kind of getting at an pretty interesting kind of idea of this boy of Francis having to choose between these two things, and having it's really kind of making him mad, because he's told that these two things are, these two things are the truth. It's like they that all these, he's told by his own peers time and time again, like that Christianity or that religion is a superstition, that it's like a waste of time, and that he should like get move beyond these like kind of superstitious beliefs. And then on the other hand, he's told again and again by Tarwater that he's like completely um that he should fulfill all these prophecies, and like, and yeah. So anyway, that's all I have for Flannery O'Connor, and definitely recommended. It is a little bit of a change of style, I think, for her. It was a little bit less. I think some of her earlier stuff had a little bit more humor to it. I think there's like a little underlying, even if a deadpan kind of humor. Um, a fun fact is that she was actually at some point early in her career, I think, um, a cartoonist, I think, for a small, I believe, a small newspaper, and her cartoons were pretty interesting. If you look at them, they're kind of very. Some of them look almost uh, very like simplistic, kind of almost like uh, childlike sketching etchings of like these characters that have very unique kind of almost like a tragic irony to them. And but I don't know if I can really remember offhand. But yeah, if you look up her, obviously you can look up her cartoons. A short-lived career, I believe. I don't know if she pursued that any longer after that, after she became a writer. But yeah, so that's all I have for The Violent Bear It Away, and thanks for watching.